This morning we read an affirmation together that looks like this. And it's part of a larger statement that in its full expanded version goes, we dedicate our time, talent, treasure, and expertise to the healthy and joyful evolution of our spiritual community, the community in which we live, and the greater community of the world. It's part of our organization's statements of values. And I read the expanded version for you because it brings up a question for me. How much time? How much of my treasure, how much of my expertise am I expected to be dedicating? Because from the affirmation, which doesn't clarify, it sounds like it's all of it. And can that be right? All of it. Well, my understanding is that if I give all of my time to the growth of my spiritual community, there may be nothing left for my family. And that can't be right. If I give all of my time to the evolution of my world to the point where I've got nothing left inside of me, what will the outcome be? Will I be able to be my best self if I empty myself out completely, even if it is in the name of love? I recently flew back from the other side of the world, and when you travel that far, you add it all up, the journey takes over 24 hours door to door. And no matter if you're traveling first class or last class, it's the same thing, with all of the time zones that you're going through and then the standing in lines and then the commuting. It can take its toll on a person. And I know when I eventually get home, I've only got fumes left in my tank. I'm running on empty, And I'm not able always to be my very best self when I'm like that. Look, my values are still in me. It's just I can't always reach through the emptiness to get to them. I still believe in goodness. It's just that I can't always act on it when I'm that empty. Now, I know if an emergency took place, I know I would rise up to meet its need. Or if a family member or a friend got into trouble, I would show up no matter how tired I was. At the same time, though, I know how much better I could respond if my needs were taken care of, if I had a shower, if I had a sleep, if I had a meal, if I had fresh water. These things help us fill up. Last time I spoke here, I introduced the idea that service is that which comes from the overflow in our lives. And what fills us up is spiritual practice. And when we're filled up with spiritual practice from the overflow, we can share in a healthy, loving way. So the question also is, what fills a person up? Well, I can think of examples. For example, the classes that we are teaching starting this week, I noticed that students in the classes, they experience an increased sense of well-being. And I think it's got something to do with being in the room, in the community where we are actually practicing meditation, where we are carefully learning to create skillful affirmative statements for our prayers, where we are studying spiritually inspiring texts, because that is the practice. That's the practice, and the practice fills our mental and emotional tanks up so that we've got something to fuel us to meet the world and its apparently increasing urgent needs. Have you noticed? Oh, and have you noticed how the media has to up the ante these days? It has to increase the sense of urgency for what is at stake in order to capture our attention. Because now with the internet, there is so much access to so much information that ordinary good news doesn't stand a chance. No. Everything has to be made urgent and terrifying, and a person's tanks can be emptied when that person is bombarded with urgent and terrifying stories. It results in this feeling of I don't know how to respond. I don't know what to do. So don't fall for it. Instead, we get to fuel up frequently. We get to feed the fire inside. We get to nurture the inner light. We get to deepen our connection to and our awareness of that peace which is already and always present at the center of our being. So what fills us up? More examples. Our staff, right here at the Center for Spiritual Living in the building, every Tuesday, 3 p.m., we interrupt whatever we are doing. We take a 30-minute break to sit together in the chapel quietly and to join in a spiritual mind treatment and affirmative prayer, because that's the practice. And do you know, it's like a breath of fresh air in our work. And from my perspective, we always leave that chapel in a better state than when we came in. And if anybody's ever in the building at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, you can join us. No one has ever turned away. Another way to fuel up, is to come to services on Sunday mornings, Sunday evenings, Wednesday evenings. That is a form of practice too, a form of practice that has built into it something very valuable, and it's this: being together in real time in the same room. Because you know the internet today. Oh my God. The internet can be a substitute for so many real things. It replaces real connections. It substitutes for intimacy of every kind. It switches conversations with short messages. It maximizes isolation by giving us the power to block out anything that offends us. And it replaces learning with unverified information. Today you and I, we can see and hear any preacher talking in any religion at any time according to our convenience. We don't even have to get out of bed. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the internet. I give thanks for everything it has brought into my life and for how it has made it possible to have connections that weren't possible before over great distances. I appreciate that. And yet, at the same time, I want to be mindful to say that getting up, cleaning up, and showing up is very important as a form of spiritual practice, because it fills us up in a way that social media will never, ever be able to. Oh, showing up. It's a spiritual practice. Even if you don't like the speaker, even if you didn't like the music, even if you don't like the topic or you've heard it before, even if the parking is a challenge, because beyond all of those considerations, there is something so valuable in the room for you and me: community. So, I want to appreciate you that you showed up today. Lovely. And if you're listening on the radio or watching the videos online, because of geographical difference or some challenge in your schedule, I invite you to also ask yourself, and where can I show up today for the same experience? Because I want to acknowledge that by showing up, you are doing something to fill up your tanks, and the whole world is going to benefit from the overflow. I especially want to appreciate you who show up regularly. There are people, and I see you. There are people here who have been showing up for all of the 23 years that I've been the minister here, and some before that. I ask myself sometimes, what can I possibly say to these people that they haven't heard before? In fact, I did ask one of them. And you know what she said? She said, when I first showed up here, I was in such need. And there were other people here who were already filled up. And so they were able to create the space for me to complete my discovery and explore my own healing. And then there came the time when I started to get my life handled, and I might have said at that time, okay, I've got it all straightened out, now things are okay, time for me to move on. But I realized that now I had something to contribute from my overflow. So I kept on showing up whether I thought I needed it or not, because I know that there is someone else showing up right now who's probably in the same condition that I once was. And now I am creating the space for them to discover their own path and explore their own healing. Now, isn't that something? Yeah. So we dedicate our time and talent and treasure and expertise to the healthy and joyful evolution of our spiritual community, the community we live in, the community of beings on the planet, the community of the world. We show up for it. This is one of our movement's values, Center for Spiritual Living. And it makes sense that would be one of our values, especially for a group of people who have a lofty vision of a world, a healthy, loving world that works a little bit better for everyone all the time. And this value stands as a reminder to us spiritual beings that we don't stop with ourselves when we're doing all of this spiritual learning. No, rather, we let what we are discovering and learning, we let it fill and then flow over, and we share it with the world. So now what does that mean, from the overflow? Filled up to the top and flowing over. So does that mean I've got to wait until I have enough before I share? No. Does that mean I have to wait until I've got all my stuff handled before I extend a helping hand? No. Does that mean I have to learn to love myself first before I can love someone else? No. Don't you know that if we all wait until we have enough money, many important causes would never be funded? Don't you know? If we all wait until we got enough time in our schedule, some very important tasks would never be done. If we all wait until everything is perfect, we're going to wait a long time. Oh, and if we all wait until we fully accept ourselves, we're never going to get started doing nothing. Wayne Mueller, the founder of the organization Bread for the Journey, he once talked about, and I believe it was at the Asilomar conference for our movement, he talked about how some people do wait. They do wait until they give their contribution. They wait to perfect what they've got. They might even delay taking action or contributing anything to the world because they are thinking it's not good enough yet. Or maybe they doubt that what they've got to do or say or contribute will make any kind of lasting impact on the suffering of the world, so they hold back. Oh, I'm so grateful my mother didn't do that. I'm so grateful she didn't wait until she could love herself completely and perfectly before she gave me the gift of her care and protection. Oh. Her love taught me that you and I, just as we are, and just as we are not, with all of our imperfections, have a valid and wanted gift to give to the world. And what each one of us has is different from the other. In other words, you and I can care about and support each other long before we have perfected self-love. Long before we've got our stuff together. Don't you know? Even people who are doing spiritual practices still have issues. Don't you know? Even people who show up to services regularly for 30 plus years still have personality quirks. Stuff to work out. Don't you know, even people who have a regular, strong financial giving practice still have moments of uncertainty and doubt. Don't you know, even people who come to all of our free meditation groups still encounter chaotic thinking in the rattlings of their mind. And don't you know, it's okay. Because even with issues, personality quirks, doubts, and rattling thinking, we can still show up for each other in our imperfect and diverse ways. We dedicate our time, talent, and treasure and expertise to the healthy and joyful evolution of life. A wise person once said that life's inner secret is the divine pattern in you, and it is a pattern you can only really know when you show up and present yourself in service to the world. It comes to life in your service. Now, the way Wayne Mueller's organization started, if I remember the story correctly, is that he put aside a portion of his therapy fees a little bit over time so that he could eventually fund some act of altruism. Not necessarily a big one. There were small local enterprises that served the community, like students learning to do sustainable gardens, teaching local people crafts, things like this. And he started the projects because he felt he had something to offer, but he didn't quite know what form it would take, and he didn't want that not knowing to stop him from taking action. So he started where he was. And that inspires me. It also helps me appreciate our nonprofit partner program here at the center, and how we put aside a small portion of our weekly revenue to contribute to organizations that are doing good work in the world that we ourselves may not do, so that we can fund it and that we can take the good that we receive and share from the overflow and continue the circulation of well-being. So this year, you have contributed to the AIDS Life Cycle, the Burn Foundation, Becoming Independent series, community project, Mentor Me, the Wildfire Relief Fund through Redwood Credit Union, the Santa Rosa's Children Chorus, Sloan House Women's Shelter, Sonoma County Task Force for the Homeless, the Living Room, and Villages in Partnership. Not only are we growing here, but from our overflow, we are sharing and circulating and expanding the good experienced. Now, what inspires me about these organizations is that even though each one of them cannot relieve the suffering of the entire world, they are, nevertheless, each one in their own way, contributing something to the world. Like that other Jana Stanfield song reminds us, that we cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all of the good that we can do. So to me, service is a choice we make, a choice to become a helpful presence for each other. It's an attitude. An ongoing attitude is not limited to one activity. It's not limited to that one contribution I make. It's not limited to that one volunteer opportunity I show up for. No, it's a state of mind that expresses love and kindness, and it focuses on meeting all beings as co-equal travelers in the spiritual journey. I was in Bali last week. I was facilitating a tour for our center in Atlanta. We were having a wonderful time, and I was sitting on the side of the road with some of the local guides while the people were doing their thing, and I struck up a conversation, a playful conversation with the guides, asking which nation's tourists are the best. Dreading the answer. But without hesitation, they both said, Americans. I said, why? Expecting them to say something like, you tip well. But you know what they said instead? They said, because you respect us and our culture, and you genuinely want to learn about our way of life, and most importantly, you talk to us like equals, whereas other tourists can sometimes be dismissive and treat us like lesser beings. That conversation on the sidewalk, it answered my question of how to bring an attitude of service alive in my own life. Because I don't have to come up with an idea for a world-changing project, although that's good too. I can begin practicing immediately by bringing into my attitude towards life common courtesy, by being interested and respectful, by letting others go first, by saying please and thank you, by being nice and authentic and kind, by being warm and generous and humane. That is practice. That is service. And it's the kind of practice and service that fills up the tanks, and from that overflow, the whole world benefits. I invite you to breathe in with me. As you exhale, let your thoughts welcome these affirmative statements of prayer. Come, great and infinite mind of creation, and inspire me to do great things. Let your infinite wisdom make me wise. I am making myself available to your guidance and direction. I am available. I'm available to be directed by the inner presence, which prompts me to do the things that must be done. Oh, wonderful presence, flooding me, filling me with light and inspiring me with love. Greater than fear is this love. This love dissolves all fear. It casts out all doubt and sets all things free. Love, like a river of life, flows through me and refreshes me with its eternal blessings. Love, fearless and strong, mighty in its work, it fills my very being with its powerful presence. And so it is that I can say my affairs are directed by this presence of love. Within me, it knows what to do and how to do it. So I do not hinder it, but I let it operate in my affairs. It prospers and directs me and guides my life. My affairs are managed by love. My affairs are directed by wisdom, and they cannot fail to prosper and expand. Come, great and infinite mind of creation, and inspire me to do great things.